Coast feel dirty side, let it dirty, dirty. And y'all really feel I got to make it East Coast feel West Coast feel.
Boy, I've been watching you like the hawk in the sky. You are my prey. Boy, I promise you, if we keep bumping heads, I know that one of these days we gon' get up while they talk on the phone. But see, I don't know if that's good. I've been holding back this secret from you. I probably shouldn't tell it. If I let you know, you need to know about. I'm talking about nobody. Are you responsible? Boy, I gotta watch my back, 'cause I'm not just saying that. Is it my goal? Is it your goal? Sometimes I'm very down. Right now I'm not enough. Say yes or say no, 'cause I believe somebody. Tell me if that's somebody. Boy, won't you pick me up at the park right now, up the block while everyone sleeps? I'll be waiting there with my trips, my loads, my hat, just so I'm low key. If you tell the world, oh boy, see I'm trusting you with my heart, my soul. I probably shouldn't let you. If I let this go, you need to know about it. I'm telling you, I hope you're responsible. Boy, I'm not just here to cry. Is it my goal? Is it your goal? Sometimes I'm very good. Right now I'm not enough. Say yes or say no, 'cause I really need somebody. Tell me you're that somebody.
Baby girl, I'm the man from the big B. Hey, won't you come play round my way? Hey, listen to what I gotta say. Simple plan. Don't you know I am the man? Rock shows here in Japan. Have people shaking my hand. Baby girl, better known as Ali. Give me goosebumps and hot feet. We can play haters, believe. Don't you know? Gotta tell somebody. 'Cause
I really need somebody. Tell me you're that somebody. If I let this go, you need to know about it. I'm telling you, are you responsible? Is it my goal? Is it your goal? Sometimes I'm very good. Right now I'm not enough. Say yes or say no. I really need somebody. Tell me you're that somebody.
Welcome, welcome. Ooh, sultry with the mix tonight, DJ Puzzle. What's up? How you doing tonight? Chilling. Okay, kicking back. Welcome everyone back to Accented Dialogues in Diaspora, presented by the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network. My name is Philip Nguyen. I'll be your moderator for tonight, and we have got an incredible show on directing the narrative, AAPI representation in film and media for y'all tonight. Before we get started and into it, I just wanted to give everyone who's rejoining us, or this isn't your first Accented show, a quick welcome back. I see some familiar names and places in the chat. And for everyone who this is your first Accented show, welcome. We're really looking to have inspired, intimate conversations with our host and our panelists tonight. And to give you all a little bit of background into the Diasporic Vietnamese Artist Network, which presents Accented Dialogues in Diaspora, DVAN is our refugee, immigrants, survivors, and descendants who believe that our stories must be heard. Its mission is to celebrate and foster diasporic Vietnamese and Southeast Asian voices, and that our stories must be championed and passed on to current and future generations. This Accented Dialogues in Diaspora show really started as a response to the ongoing pandemic. We started in early 2020, so we've been going on for about 2 years, and since then we've really been fortunate to have guests like the ones from today, as well as an incredible slate of 30-40 plus guests over what's almost been 20 shows. And that really wouldn't be possible for us without the folks that have been able to support this show in its growth and in its expansion. So I really want to give a quick shout out to Eastwind Books of Berkeley, who has been our ongoing bookstore partner, as well as to the Serdna Foundation, who is our sponsor for the show tonight. And to give you all a little bit of background into the Serdna Foundation, the Serdna Foundation seeks to foster sustainable communities in the United States, communities guided by principles of social justice and distinguished by healthy environments, inclusive economies, and thriving cultures. For over 5 generations, the foundation has been governed largely by the descendants of John E. Andrews and has developed a tradition of innovative service for those in need of help or opportunity. So really thank you to the Serdna Foundation for sponsoring today's show. And for all of y'all out there who have been with the show before and continue to support us, one of the ways that we have been able to keep the show afloat and to keep coming out with incredible content and as conversations and guests is through our live auctions, or through our auctions for each show. For tonight, we also have an auction with some really cool stuff for y'all tonight to bid on. If you visit 32auctions.com/DVAN-accented17, it'll also be posted in the chat. You can get a digital copy of Bo Yeah or Dad, I'm Sorry that you see on the right. You could also get our Paper Tigers package, which includes a $40 Blu-ray disc of Paper Tigers that are signed by all of the cast and crew. And it also comes with a snapback that represents the year of the tiger in red and black. And for our third auction item for tonight, you can get a photo book for Journey from the Fall. And so thank you to our wonderful panelists today for donating these auction items that allow you to help support us do what we do, right? And so before we get to the show, one of the things that's special about Accented is that we're able to have intimate conversations. And these intimate conversations are sometimes facilitated by very special drinks that we're able to have custom curated for the show. And so I want to bring up our recurring / resident mixologist, Thuy Phang, or Mixophoria. If you could tell us about the special cocktail that we've got for tonight's show.
Hi, Philip. Hi, everyone. So for tonight, I made the red velvet for you all. And I was inspired because I was at my aunt's house this past weekend eating bún riêu. And of course, she had a platter of Thien A on the side. And I think it's such like an interesting herb with its peppery and earthy flavor. And it reminded me of a little bit of mint and basil. So I thought, why not try to make a drink out of it for this event? And since we're talking about filmmaking tonight and Asian American excellence on and off the screen, and Oscar season is coming up, I was thinking of a red carpet concept. So I put together some pomegranate juice and ginger and theato and simple syrup and lemon and bourbon and shook it all up, and we have the red velvet. So here's to our 3 filmmakers tonight, and thanks so much for having me, and I hope you all enjoy the drink.
Great, thanks, Thuy. And you can check out Thuy on Instagram at Mixophoria. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our host for tonight. He is the host of Accented Dialogues in Diaspora and the co-founder of the Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network. He is also the author of the best-selling short story collection, The Refugees, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Sympathizer, and its sequel, The Committed, as well as the children's book, Chicken of the Sea, written with his son, Ellison. Please give a warm Zoom welcome to Viet Thanh Nguyen.
Thanks so much, Philip. Hello, everybody. It's great to be back with you for another episode of Accented. I'm always excited to see where people are coming from. So I just want to, acknowledge where everybody is all over the world. It's great. Gui Mai, the novelist, is coming from Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. I hope I got that right. Jeffrey Chin and Amanda from San Francisco. The one and only Jenny Chang Lei, film producer from Saigon. Jang is coming from the other Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. Cypher from Vancouver, Stephen from Houston, Claire from Austin. We have a lot of people from LA, Alice, Wynn, Angeline, Francis, Christine, Mark Liu, hi Mark, from Little Saigon, Kim from Brooklyn, Tiara from Canada, Kim from Houston, Dr. Phil from Westminster, the poet, Sophia Terazawa from Minneapolis, Tan from Auckland, New Zealand, Bao and Tang and Aling from Seattle, TT from New York City, and Phung from New York City and also New Haven. Charles, hi Charles, from the Bay Area. Bebe Quaid Jacobs from the Silicon Valley. Giacomo, hello Giacomo, we'll be seeing you soon in person from San Jose. He's from Italy, but now he's in San Jose for the moment. And Duan Zhang from Quebec City. Hopefully I got everybody who put something into the Zoom. But one of the pleasures of doing Accented is just knowing that there's people coming from so many different places to join us tonight. And we have a pretty cool episode tonight with 3 filmmakers with 3 new films that you should all watch. And I'm going to introduce the first of them right now from our episode, Dialogues in Diaspora, presenting Directing the Narrative, AAPI Representation in Film and Media. So our first guest is Thien A. Pham. He is a producer and a director with experience in over 20 different languages and markets. Thien founded 3388 Films, a media and film production and distribution company specializing in Asian and Southeast Asian content. He produced the movie Actress Wanted, an award-winning thriller horror genre film that explores the intergenerational diasporic identities, cultural memories, and collective trauma of the Vietnamese American community. And he distributed Bo Ya, English title, Dad, I'm Sorry, the first Vietnam-produced film to surpass $1 million at the US box office. And I think it did something like 10 million in Vietnam, making it the highest grossing film, Vietnamese film ever in Vietnam, marking a historic milestone and making the film the #1 Vietnamese film of all time at the US domestic box office. Welcome, Thien.
Thank you.
Bạn bè gọi con riêng ba mẹ
Thank
nói
you,
là
Vic,
nó không nghe.
and DVAN and Accented for having me on the show today.
Wow, I like that song. We're going to talk about, what was that song, by the way?
My favorite son. It's Con Trai Cưng, means like, it's a pamper kid. Pamper son.
Great choice. All right, our next guest is Bao Tran, the director. He was mentored early on by master action director Corey Yuen, where Bao was instilled with an approach to action that doesn't rely solely on spectacle, but also draws on story and character. His editing credits include CHO LON, one of Southeast Asia's highest budgeted action blockbusters, and JACKPOT, a heartfelt comedy selected as Vietnam's official entry to the 2016 Oscars for Best Foreign Film. Variety praised his first directorial feature, The Paper Tigers, as an irresistibly good-humored debut, while the New York Times remarked on his lighthearted, refreshing approach which doesn't succumb to whitewashing or the model minority myth. Rotten Tomatoes ranks The Paper Tigers in each of their top categories for Best Action, Comedies, and Asian American Movies with a certified fresh rating. All right, welcome, Bao.
Thanks for having me. We missed it in the bio, but I'm also a bit of an actor, so I hope you saw my submission tape for The Sympathizer. Once I saw nudity required, I was like, I'm in.
Which one did you audition for?
All the parts. I don't care.
Anything.
Yeah.
Whichever has nudity.
Short and tall. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I'm just hoping to be blown up in the movie. You know, I'm not, but I just want to like die as an extra.
Yeah, exactly.
Our
Good to hear, y'all.
Is Ham Tran. His first feature, Journey from the Fall, received 16 International Festival Awards for Best Feature Film and was the first Vietnamese film released by Netflix. In Vietnam, Ham has directed the romantic comedy How to Fight in 6-Inch Heels, winner of a Golden Kite Award, and a horror film, Hollow, the first serious horror film in Vietnam to make more than $2 million in the box office. Other films include Bitcoin Heist and She's the Boss. In 2017, Ham and others formed a Vietnam-based international film company called East, which has produced the award-winning film Rom and the documentary Be Water about Bruce Lee. And East's second co-produced film, directed by Bao Nguyen, which premiered at Sundance. Ham has also directed commercials and most recently the sci-fi kids movie My Ka. Welcome, Ham.
Hi, Viet. Hi, Bao. Thanks, everybody. I love this intro music.
Why Eyes Without a Face, though?
Huh? Oh, no, Eyes Without a Face, because I have a feature that I'm going to be hopefully shooting at the end of this year, and it's a thriller. And these people wear these eyes without a face masks. And so I'm like all in the zone right now.
All right. Thanks for giving us a little preview. Hey, you know, I think between the three of you, I'm just going to guess, you all look kind of young because you're Vietnamese, right? But I'm going to guess that collectively you have at least half a century of filmmaking experience if we add up all the years, maybe longer, depending how far back we go. But so you've seen a lot of changes in your professional lives as filmmakers or people involved in film production and movie making in various kinds of ways. And of course, we're here as Vietnamese Americans, but also as Asian Americans as well. I'm kind of curious to start off with, you know, if you can give us a sense of what you think has changed over the length of your careers in the film and TV industry when it comes to the representation of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, both in terms of what's happening behind the scenes and what's happening in front of the camera. Thien, why don't we start with you?
I think it's a great question to start with. You know, I think a lot has changed, right? I think our voices are getting more heard. You know, we have more platforms now to showcase our work, and not just one specific pathway anymore, like you know, network TV or major studios. Now there are other ways for us to thrive outside the quote and unquote, you know, system, with self-distribution, grassroots marketing, and you know, leveraging the social networks and all game changers that can continue to evolve around us. But what has stayed the same though for me is the ongoing need for the authentic, unapologetic portrayals of our diverse communities, right? I don't think that need will ever go away, because as humans, we're always seeking to belong and to see the reflection of ourselves in media. So I think that's what's I think right now.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I've watched all your movies, and I think that's definitely true that they're all very different, you know, but they're all foregrounding various kinds of Vietnamese or Asian American or people of color kinds of stories. And like you're saying, there's a real desire, perceptible demand for authenticity in all these films. And we're going to talk about all of them in greater detail as well. Ham, what about you? What do you think has changed, and what has stayed the same when it comes to AAPI representation in film and media?
Wow. I think a lot has changed. I mean, I think we just had a gathering recently of, you know, like a little TED party for Vietnamese in the industry. And I have to say that, you know, when Sundance, when we premiered Journey from the Fall at Sundance, which is 16 years ago, right? We didn't really have like a panel, or we didn't have anything. I think the Asian American filmmakers that had their films at Sundance, we had a little party for them at a Chinese restaurant, right? You know, and, you know, when I went to see Bao's film Be Water, there was a panel, and, you know, and DDK was on there, all these amazing, like, and everybody was like, oh, yeah, I know this person. And so it was so exciting to actually feel that, you know, and coming back here and having that energy. I think that's what's really changed, and it's been amazing progress that we've made in the last 16 years. I think some parts that are still the same is still sort of like when we're pitching a film, this question is still asked sort of like, you know, okay, is it going to be all Asian, or is there, you know, a part for like an American in there? You know, I think there's still somewhat of that sort of like apprehension when it comes to pitching sort of like an English language film, right? Or else I think what's different now is, of course, then you can just pitch like an all Asian language film, and then they go, okay, so we'll do that in Asia, and we'll do that for the Asian market. So there's still a little bit of that, you know, uncertainty. And I think at least the great thing, sort of with Parasites winning, you know, and now sort of Squid Games being nominated for the Emmys and everything, I think at least, you know, people are more open to watching Asian language content and being open to reading subtitles, right? But still, some of the projects, you know, we still have to separate. There's still a separation for like, okay, East, like for Asian markets, and then for American markets. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember when we were going around trying to pitch the Sympathizer to various kinds of studios and everything, everybody was like, oh yeah, of course it's going to be in Vietnamese. And I wasn't quite sure whether to believe them or whether they were just blowing smoke in my face. But I think there has been at least some kind of a change there, as you're talking about. Okay, Bao, what about you? What do you think has changed and stayed the same?
Yeah, I mean, Ham makes a great distinction between kind of Asian content, I guess, you know, in American content that has the Asian elements, or Asian contents, or Asian creators. I think that's kind of like, you know, kind of the big question of the day for all of us that are crossing currents or going cross-Pacific, going to Vietnam to work, going to, you know, our respective countries to tell the stories, but also from this Asian American upbringing perspective. So it kind of has this kind of this funky thing. But I think to the question that you're asking, you know, kind of the big picture, there's a lot of interesting changes, because I think before, you know, I know you've dated ourselves, so we're the cat's out of the bag. But, you know, when I grew up, it was, you know, these basically three major networks, you know, 3 or 4 major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. And basically your stories, your the mass media content, you know, was basically through that lens, or through that platform, where middle America had to understand everything and had to see themselves, and by middle America, I mean, you know, white America. But now the tides are changing with cable networks and the streamers, and, you know, YouTube and online content. So a lot of the stories can shift and be created by us and seen by us. And there's a whole kind of like another avenue, and that's very exciting. And I think the bigger studios are getting hip to it, slowly but surely, but they're getting hip to it to understand that there's an audience for that. And it's not niche anymore. It's just another stream of storytelling. And I think that's kind of like, what's the slow, you know, tip of the iceberg. It's, you know, we're not at the promised land yet, but I think that's going to be really interesting in the next few years for us to be able to kind of keep creating and also build, you know, our own tribes and our own audiences, so that we don't have to explain, you know, why people take off their shoes in the house or whatever. Like, you know, you can see those little bits where everything has to be over-explained, and, you know, it's for, you know, this wide audience to understand, where we don't, hopefully we get to a point where we don't have to make those explanations anymore.
I think that's true. I mean, with all 3 of your movies, I don't think there is any explanation. You know, with Bo Ya, you're just thrown into the Vietnamese, you know, alley, that the neighborhood that it takes place in, because it's a film made for Vietnamese people, right? And everybody else can watch. And Macau, the same thing. There's no explanation of why Vietnam looks that way that it does. And the Paper Tigers, it just assumes that you can have this multicultural world of martial artists and guys who are over the hill, you know. So it was the commitment to just not explaining and living in your own worlds was really evident strongly in all 3 of your works. Now, one of the things that has changed, I think, since, let's say 20 years ago, for Asian American and Pacific Islanders in media, is that now it's much more of an international and transnational situation. Now, of course, we always had people like Bruce Lee doing this a long time ago, but now the conditions seem to be even more present for people to go back and forth between Asia and the United States. Now, all three of you, in fact, make your careers in both worlds, in both Vietnam and the United States. You've all been involved in Vietnamese-based and American-based productions in different ways. And I'm curious as to whether, you think there is greater opportunities, if we're just talking about Vietnam, for Vietnamese American film and media artists to go back to Vietnam to do work there versus purely being in the United States. Why don't we start with you, Thien?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, for me, I've produced in the U.S. and have distributed both in the U.S., both U.S. produced and Vietnam produced film. I haven't personally worked inside Vietnam per se, and so technically I can't speak for that specific living experience. But I thought, but through my experience working with studios, producers, and filmmakers living in Vietnam, I get a sense there's definite opportunities there, both in front and behind the camera. I think in front of the camera, I think there's definitely a room for a larger candidate pool for male talents. I think, Ham can speak to that. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. For behind the camera, there seems to be a current debate. What types of film will find success, right? I hear this a lot. And should the film be made for the Vietnam audiences first, or should it be made for the U.S. and international audiences? And this debate has been going on for a while. So every single, when the film is successful, they use this as a question to say, okay, should it be able to, can it cross, can it cross? Or if a film that doesn't do well in Vietnam, is it because it doesn't make for the Vietnamese audience? So, as a filmmaker, definitely a need for a balance there, right? So this means that there's room for filmmakers to try and test. So with more opportunities. So,
right, absolutely. Ham, what do you think? Because I think out of all three, I think you probably spent the most time in Vietnam.
I have, and yes, and essentially that's the reason why I went back to make films, because at that time, there weren't a lot of opportunities for Vietnamese American filmmakers to make films about Vietnamese families, and such. And so, going back there was opportunities, and it's the reason why it's sort of like in a snap of a finger, I've been there 10 years, right? And I didn't even realize that I was there for 10 years, but it was because, so after I made 6-inch Heels, another studio came and said, oh, what do you have? And I said, Hollow. Okay, let's make Hollow. And after I made Hollow, they were like, what do you want? What's your next idea? And I was like, Bitcoin heist. And so it was just like one film following another. So in that sense, there's a lot of opportunity, but the sort of like the flip side of that is there's the glass ceiling though, right? You sort of have to stay within the popular genre, right? And so that's the reason why I keep making films that are very different. It's because I'm already helping so many other filmmakers, local filmmakers, with their films, and it's all romantic comedies and all broad comedies and things like that. So there's not a lot of explorations in terms of genres. And of course, with the censorship as well, you can do a horror film, but you can't explore the horror genre as far as you want to take it, right? That is slowly changing. And I hear that, I think starting 2023, there might not even be a need to go through the censors anymore, right? So they're opening that up. So that opportunity is going to expand. That's great, right? But it is sort of, it's a double-edged sword, right? So one is like there's the limited sort of topics that you can explore. But at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities, so you can actually get your films funded. But then you look, and it's changing here in the States. There's so many opportunities now for Asian Americans, and I came back and I was like, boom, I saw, oh, this film, there are 3 treatments of like series that they're going to be made about Little Saigon. I was like, wow, how did this happen? When was that interest? When did that happen? So I'm so excited for Asian Americans here who are making who are just killing it. I think Viet Nguyen the other, was the director, was
Other
on the
Viet
show,
Thanh.
right? And he's killing it, directing TV. And there are so many other talented, Vietnamese American directors as well. And so it makes me really happy, and it makes me very hopeful that it's sort of the tides are rising on both sides, right?
Yeah, and someone like you, but also our other panelists are also equipped to be on either side, whichever tide rises faster or first, right? Now, Bao, I know you've edited at least a couple of Vietnamese movies, as we mentioned in your bio. What's your take on this question of opportunities, whether it's in the US or Vietnam?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think for a bit of trivia, Ham is my senior, and he's actually the one who kind of brought me first to Vietnam for CHO LON when he started directing Six Shit Heels. He had to hop off cutting that show, and so he brought me on, and I was like splashdown pretty. I was like, I think he had emailed me like maybe, oh my god, like not more than a month.
I was like, what are you doing, right? You want to come over and cut a film?
And I said, yes, and see, never look back. But that's exactly kind of the excitement, the intoxicating, because here in the US, you have to pitch and develop and stuff like it's just like so slow. And it's like very great, grinding on the soul. But once you go down there, if you just find the right people, you pitch the idea, you can get it going pretty quickly. And so I think that was really exciting, just being a part of that whole thing. And if anyone's ever been, even just being on the streets and eating and drinking, it's like there's a vibrancy and a life to it. And same goes for the film industry. It's like the energy is just imbued all around. So I think that was really interesting and exciting. Obviously, with the censorship board and as an editor specifically, it kind of falls to your shoulders to have to kind of like bear the brunt of a myriad of notes and all that crazy stuff. And that's kind of the other side. But I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it was a great way to kind of learn and really just kind of like a little bit of School of Hard Knocks and try to understand like how different people think about movies. It's not just art. It also let's be honest, it's also a commodity. It's also commerce, and it's also things about that you have to kind of understand all the levers and all that stuff. But at any rate, it was also exciting to be able to tell a story that you didn't have to take for granted those kind of micro explanations that you have to do with a story. You set down a story in Vietnam, here's the characters, here we go. And so it was very liberating to be able to kind of go through that type of storytelling, with JACKPOT, for example. Like it was, it's based around this lottery ticket seller. And the director, Dustin Nguyen, I didn't know anything about this lottery ticket thing. I was like, you just kind of jump into the project. I'm like, how much do people know about this? How much do we have to explain, or how much do we have to kind of do? He's like, no, it's common knowledge. Like everybody knows this thing. And so then we were able to kind of zip through a lot of that storytelling beats, if you will, to kind of get to the meat of the matter. And so it's just stuff like that was really cool. So it just felt like it sounds weird, but it sounds like the brakes were off, and that was a good thing. And then you could just go and do the thing and not have to like carry on all this baggage of like, won't they get it, and all that stuff. And it was just a really freeing aspect of that. And then, going back to America, to be honest, like it's really slow here. They work really slow. I'll be honest. Yeah, it's really hard to change gears when you go on a really fast pace set or a filmmaking style that's really quick and you're thinking on your feet and decision making. And you come here and it's like meeting after meeting, first of all, and just grinding on that. And then when you get to set, you have, union hours. Don't get me wrong, those are very important. But people are just kind of work at a certain pace that's a little bit different. And it's just that's kind of the interesting thing that I had to kind of like push along here to try to keep that pace and mentality of just go, but also have that. So it's an interesting thing to me. I think it's just getting all these tips and tools of the trade, and then try to be the best filmmaker that I can be. But you can learn from all types of filmmaking, and you start to learn the Hollywood way isn't the only way, and you really start to see all the things that could be useful for you.
Right. I think my internet connection was unstable for a moment, but I have just a really before we get to all of your movies, I just have a really basic question about Vietnam, which is how fluent do you have to be in Vietnamese to actually either work in Vietnam, or in Thien's case, to collaborate with Vietnamese companies and directors and all that kind of stuff? Because I'm not sure how fluent each of you are. I'm not sure if this is a very personal question, but I think it's a question that occurs to me and maybe to many people in our audience who'll be like, well, we would love to go back to Vietnam to do some work, but how fluent do you have to be in Vietnamese to make this happen? Bao, why don't we start with you?
Let's put it this way. I think if you show willingness to learn, I think you can still go a long way. So, if anyone is maybe not as fluent and maybe is questioning, don't worry about it. Like just grab a Pimsleur Rosetta Stone and get to Vietnam, and immerse yourself. I spoke Vietnamese at home, and I spoke, I learned how to basically speak with family. But when you get there, you immerse, and there's slang. Obviously, my family moved late 70s, and a lot of language and particulars of slang and all that is changed completely. So you had to like pick up all those things. As an editor, yeah, you have to kind of like watch, the footage and understand the dialogue and what's being said. But you see it take after take after take. You start to like, what they're saying, and then you can start to stitch together. So for me particularly, it was okay, and it was great to just be there and be able to pick up the language. So I don't know, don't be discouraged. Yeah, I think it's not impossible, but it certainly helps.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Ham, what was your experience?
My Vietnamese is getting better, but it was really atrocious when I went back, right? Like my Vietnamese, when I went back like 10 years ago, was like third graders. Is really bad, maybe even worse. But at least my comprehension, that's like my speaking skill, right? But my comprehension was much higher because my Banoi is Vietnamese from Vĩnh Long, so I hear better than I speak, right? But of course, like 10 years ago, or even up to 5 years ago, I'm having meetings with the studio head, and they're still "Em hiểu không?" And I was like, "Em hiểu," like, do you understand? Do you understand me? And so, but like Bao said, though, what's really great is that, everybody's so sweet there, though. They're so they're very kind in terms of like when you show that you're willing to speak it or to learn it. They don't laugh at you when you're saying the wrong accent, which I usually tend to do, right? But they sort of they correct by just repeating it with the correct accent, which I love, right? And so I think that it's really sweet to work with locals in that way. They're actually very supportive, and it's different for me too, because a lot of the films that I do, they're not the genres that they're used to. So a lot of times they don't know what I'm shooting. They don't know why I'm asking them to do things a certain way. And so, but as I try to explain it to them, very fundamental and very, very fundamental Vietnamese, they understood, right? And that's actually, it turned out to be a good thing for Micah, because, I just speak in fundamentals with the kids and they understand, right? So that really helped.
Yeah, I've been to Vietnam a few times, and I've been corrected in the way that you're talking about. But I also went to Vietnam to study Vietnamese for 7 months. If by studying Vietnamese we mean going to bars and nightclubs a lot, which I did, and that helps too. Alcohol really.
That's your PhD.
All right, good. You haven't been to Vietnam to do this, but I assume you've had to like have conversations with the folks in Vietnam.
Yeah. Yes. It's. I go back to Vietnam quite often, and my first language is Vietnamese, actually. So for me, it's quite natural to conduct business in Vietnamese. But I think the learning curve is to understand the differences in culture. I think that's how words and behaviors are interpreted, right? So personally, I'm more direct with how I conduct business and in the exchanges. But Vietnam has a different directness I had to get used to. They have some kind of, sometimes it can get very direct with them, and so understand that culture and make it a little bit easier for us to work with them. So I think I have a very good question for. I see in the chat that somebody asked, like, as a storyboard artist, do you need to speak the language, right? I think it's a creative. I don't think you need to have to be fluent, right? I think the filmmaking language is pretty much the same everywhere. But like I said, I think the learning curve would be to understand the differences in culture. I think when you lock that down, I think everything else is gonna start to come in place.
Right. Oh, by the way, if you have questions for our filmmakers, please be sure to put them into the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A. And then after the break, you'll have the opportunity, or Philip will be calling on those questions for our filmmakers. Now, let's get to the part everybody's really been waiting for. Let's talk about the movies that each of you have made recently. We have trailers for each of the movies. We're going to get into them. So let's start with Bo Ya. Philip, can you run the trailer for Bo Ya?
Sang mới tới hả Sang?
Vụ gì?
Ăn sáng nha, cơm nó nấu, sườn nó nướng, nhưng mà nước mắm Lệ pha.
Chào mừng tất cả các bạn đã quay trở lại với channel của Quang.
Thế tại sao hôm qua mày để nó đánh tao mà mày không cản?
Tôi biết nó quýnh bà khi nào mày vô tôi cản. Mày thấy cái miệng con vợ mày hỗn kiểu đó, biết trước sau thì nó cũng bị tán thôi. Ba phải nghĩ cho con bù tọt chứ, nó đâu sống trong môi trường này được. Cái môi trường này có cái vấn đề gì mà không được?
Thằng chó! Ăn nhậu tối ngày, bạn mày là đồ chó! Bộ muốn mua đất mua đường này luôn sao vậy? Người nhà tao chậm sao tao qua? Nghèo nhất sốt mà cảnh không chịu nổi à. Phải theo anh mày, cái nghề của mày tao thấy nó lông bông quá. Nửa hút thức ăn làm gì?
Hồi nãy bác hai mới chửi ba, thằng suối, ba bán cái nhà này đi. Nó nặng rồi lắm.
Cái tao nói có cái gì không đúng. Cái đây rõ có phải là cái loại mà có cha sinh mà không có mẹ dạy không?
Đừng thái độ đó với tao. Ở nhà mới ăn cơm mà mày. Mày coi thường tao hả Quang? Ba San! Ba San! Toàn ngồi ai vậy?
Má nó chứ ai.
Đồ vô trách nhiệm. Mấy năm qua cô ở đâu mà bây giờ vậy đôi? Mày chỉ quan tâm đến mong muốn của ba. Bà không bao giờ bà quan tâm tới cảm xúc của những người ở đây. Bây giờ mày dạy tao luôn cái cách yêu thương ai hả? Tao muốn yêu mà kệ tao chứ. Mày nói lý lẽ giùm được không? Con thương ba mà ba nói một hồi như con là mất dạy vậy. Con có thương ba không?
Con ghét ba.
Vì sao cha ơi, chẳng kể con nghe điều cha tiếc nuối từ lâu trôn giấu, khi đã phải quên đam mê đời mình, để con nó ấp ra giật vận mưu sinh vượt qua sóng gió, lời cha sống đuối mở rộng tim con bao dung như
tôi đã nói với ba rồi, mỗi người một cuộc sống.
cuộc đời chỉ nhiều tiếng nuối khi ngước lên cao. Sao cha không ở cùng con lâu hơn?
Ba nó mà nó còn đuổi mình là cái nghĩa địa gì?
So in the comments, Tuchan says she laughed and cried her eyes out watching this movie, and it's not an unusual sentiment because the film obviously struck a big chord with moviegoers in Vietnam. I think it did make $10 million, making it the biggest Vietnamese. How much?
17.
$17 million.
Yeah, it's almost 20. So it's like 400 bill. It's like 7. Yeah.
That's big money even for the United States. So the biggest Vietnamese produced grossing film in Vietnam. Thien, you are the distributor, the American distributor for this movie, and it did make at least $1 million here, making it the biggest Vietnamese production here in the United States as well. Tell us, really quickly, what the plot of the film is.
Okay, just quickly. Then it just basically it's about a dysfunctional family and the parent and child sacrifices. It will make you cry and it will make you laugh. That's as short it's gonna get.
A little bit more. It's like a father and a son, and the father is both this guy in the alley, and he's like the self-sacrificial father figure, and then the son is a YouTube media influencer, the guy with the perm in his hair. And by the way, Ham, you also have a guy with perm in his hair in your movie. Is perming hair now a thing for Vietnamese men?
Yeah, so many looks are being tried out and explored. I love it. It's a whole new
I think a perm is a big mistake, generally speaking, for but the YouTube media influencer is the son. And they, of course, they come into a clash because the father wants to take care of his family, and the family, as you said, is dysfunctional. It's a whole bunch of really kind of problematic people. And the son wants to, wear these fashionable clothes and live in this penthouse and do all these kinds of things that the people in the alley just don't understand. There's a great scene when the son has bought this beautiful apartment in a tower, and then his father, he has his father live with him, and the father invites all the relatives from the alley into the apartment, and they trash it, doing karaoke. And I'm so familiar with this kind of, generational modernity versus tradition kind of clash. But I have to say, I identified more with the son than with the father, whereas I'm guessing a lot of Vietnamese people identified with the father, and this message that family comes first in this movie. Thien, is that kind of a story, different generations, the tradition versus modernity clash? Is that something that you think really resonates widely with a lot of Vietnamese people right now in the cities that were coming to see this movie?
I believe so. I totally believe so. I mean, we're a little short, but it's I think because of the story, because it's such a universal theme, and it's so, I would say, unapologetically Vietnamese, and it's set in a backdrop of a small alley in Saigon Live, like you just said. So I believe it's cross. I mean, it's when we take the film to the U.S., that's always the question. Like, will it be too Vietnamese, right? Will it be too Vietnamese for the audience here in the U.S.? And I guess from the success, the answer is no. I mean, it's a very universal, and I think we all, either it's the son or the father, will find something in the film that we will relate to. So
when I was in Vietnam studying Vietnamese, I lived in an alley, in Saigon, in the center, and it felt very familiar watching the alley that you were depicting, that kind of a life. Like everybody, it's overcrowded and everybody knows everybody's business, and you live with these people for your entire life or multiple generations, and you love and hate these people all at the same time, and you can't extricate yourself from these kinds of circumstances. So as you say, it's unapologetically Vietnamese because the film makes no effort to explain that this is how a lot of people in cities in Vietnam live. And there's, for example, a lot of scenes where the streets, the alley is flooded with water, and my son, who's 8 years old, said, "Why is it flooded?" And the film never explains it, because that's just a fact of life for certain parts of Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just a lot of things happen in the film that it's required you to kind of take it as is sometime, right? And it's like a life in the alley. It just happened. You don't know why it happened. It just happened, and the film is about, I believe it's the reason why it crossed so well is the film is about learning the language of family. It's learning language of family, but about the Vietnamese family, and the universal theme. But the realness of it is that it makes it so beautiful. We get touched on in so many ways. I think many people even related to the I would say the girlfriend of the dad. How she feels, it's always there for him, but that's why it's just a lovely scene between them at the end, that showcase the relationship that's in them for the whole life there. So
I'm glad the girlfriend was a bad cook. That helps more real, versus her being a great cook. But okay, last question for you. It was also very popular here in the United States. Who do you think the audience was for this film in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I mean, it's a little bit tricky question to answer quick, but it's in terms of distribution, when we take a film like this to the U.S., I think the question has always been, is this going to be able to cross, right? I think will Vietnamese people here in the U.S. accept it? Obviously, with the success of the film in Vietnam and how popular the lead actor is, I mean, he's number one Vietnamese celebrity on Facebook. So, of course, when the film came to the U.S., there's a momentum there. However, I mean, with great momentum with the Vietnam release like that, in the U.S. release was a big unknown. I know looking at the success right now, we might forget, but we were in the middle of the pandemic, and it's the first week for the theaters, the reopening, right? So many theaters hadn't been turned on the projectors for months. Some people, actually the film is the first time they turned on. They didn't even have a chance to test. So in the U.S., we took a lot of risks. We focused on the target market and strategically, plan our marketing efforts. So our idea is that attempt to prepare and ready to act. So because we wanted to hand selected every theater we opened in. And every potential theater we could open in, because it's just a specific film, and we don't have any what I would say like a pathway, right? There is no one had done this before in the past, right? So when we first opened up about 20 theaters on the first weekend, the pre-sales were off the roof, right? Even the theater chains were surprised. So opening weekend, we made it to the top 10 at the U.S. box office with under 20 theaters. So we were so laser focused on where we opened this. Even the studio execs reached out to us to find out how we do this, right? So since we were so, I would say like well prepared with the grassroots efforts and ready to employ, we aggressively opened to 38 theaters in the second week, and then 47 theaters by the third week, and marking it the widest theater count for any Vietnam film in the U.S. So to come back to your question, so who's the audience? So we didn't know. We knew who our audience is. First, it had to be first and foremost the Vietnamese Americans, right? But what our goal is that, well, our job was to figure out where they are, right? Because it's so, even though we're a big community, but it's spread all over the country. So we had to find out where they are. And so we have to unlock those markets. And there are films where we open, there are theaters that we open that never have a Vietnamese, like we never have a Vietnamese film open there before, right? So for that, we focus on open it for the Vietnamese market, get the Vietnamese community come out to support the film. So that's the first goal, like to get the community, because I think with our experience, we understand that if we take the film and just release in the general market, it's gonna get killed, right? Because for an independent film like this, when they get to the theaters, they treat us just like anything else. Like first weekend, there's no numbers, they will kick you out. So our goal is to gain the momentum and the support from the community first and foremost to come out and support. So when we build that momentum for the first weekend, that's where we're in business. To realistically, at that time we have much more leverage. So we get to open the film in multiple cities, in more cities, and we be able to open more in places where we can get new audience to come in. So from what we know, from what I understand, see that majority of our audience support at the beginning, first week, is the Vietnamese Americans. But I think starting the second week, third week, and we went up to, I believe we stay in the theater on 6th and 7th week, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And I believe that at that time, the audience, normally friends and families of the Vietnamese Americans.
Great, and hopefully that's going to be a template for future Vietnamese produced movies to reach these kinds of audiences, building with the Vietnamese American community first. All right, Bao, let's talk about your movie, The Paper Tigers, which I found to be very, very funny and also resonant because, in fact, I just had my high school best friend over for dinner yesterday, and he's like one of those guys in the movie. When we were growing up, he was on the wall. He has his own dojo. He's a martial artist. He's super buff and everything like that, and he's middle-aged with kids. What happens to these young, hard-bodied men when they grow and face middle-aged challenges? I think that's partly what the movie's about. Philip, can we see the trailer from? Oh, by the way, Booyah is available on Amazon Prime, so everybody can watch it there. Philip, can we see the trailer for The Paper Tigers?
1, 2, 3.
No more challenges. Kung Fu without honor. It's just fighting.
3 tigers, baby.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Go. That's right. How that taste, old man?
Dad.
Yeah, buddy.
Do you know any Kung Fu?
I'm retired.
Who's the old guy?
That was our teacher. Called him Sifu.
You didn't hear? Sifu's dead. Something's not right.
There was no heart attack.
Do you think the poison fingers is real?
Yep, 教授，乜嘢都清楚。
Okay, just say it in English.
Just say it
do
in English, man. When the hands cross, all will be revealed.
Did he hit me?
No, it's just a glance. Just a glance, man.
Fine.
You got this. You got this.
It's fine.
Okay, look, Sifu could have set anyone off. Time catches up to some people. Like you, the great three tigers.
We all swore together that we would defend the weak. Out there is a very, very bad man.
Where can we find this guy?
Okay, go.
Go. I know. Hold on.
What are you doing a three-point turn? Just Ewan.
Three tigers back again.
Does everything have to be a fight with you?
Well, you might be a disgrace. Sifu had only 3 disciples. I swear to be loyal to my brothers. To the very day I die.
If you guys looking for a, fourth tiger, I take karate. Let me know.
I have to say, the white guy was pretty good in this movie.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Okay, so, interesting choice to make this movie about the middle-aged guys, given the way middle-aged guys typically look, versus the young guys and the way they look. So tell us about the choice. Why set the story in this later stage in their lives? And also, of course, tell us what the story is.
The story, as you can see from the trailer, is about these 3 Kung Fu classmates who grew up together training ever since they were little ones in Kung Fu under the constant guidance of their master, their Sifu. But for some reason, and as life happens, they all go their separate ways. So they all have a falling out of sorts. And they basically find themselves estranged, but they find out that their master is killed. And so they get back together to find out what happened. So now they have to find out what happened and avenge their master. But now they've got kids, they've got jobs, they've got wives, they're middle-aged and all those things. So the way we like to say it is like, imagine if you had to fight a death match tonight, but you got to go pick up your kids from soccer. So it's kind of like the basically almost the Asian American experience of being stuck between these 2 cultures and almost this old school Confucian values, but also modern day life and trying to be you and try to be the best you, but all those conflicting loyalties. So that's, I thought, what was really interesting, because it was, like you say, it's maybe a little bit me. I was maybe knocking on that door of getting to middle age. I'm still 22, so it's okay. But I imagined what it would like to be middle aged. And I started thinking about, all those emotions and things that we thought were cool when we were younger that gave us a lot of precious, memories and what we're passionate about, our hobbies and whatnot. And sometimes life gets in the way and we lose that flame. And so I thought that was an interesting theme to put it into like in a Kung Fu movie specifically, but also something that reflected my personal history of studying martial arts and making the best friends ever through martial arts. And then we all kind of go our separate ways too, and so that was, all that bittersweetness, the nostalgia is definitely part of all that theme.
Yeah, the minivan really hurts sometimes.
It's a Sienna classic, and when the Smithsonian does like a Vietnamese exhibit or a Vietnamese, American experience, there's going to be a Sienna. There's going to be a Sienna like right in the middle of the floor right there as the chief exhibit of the Vietnamese American experience.
Okay, so I'm curious about how the movie got made. This is your first directorial debut. You've had a lot of other experience in the industry. And now it's available on Netflix, and so it's very easy to watch. Netflix acquired it. What was the path from thinking of this to Netflix acquiring it? What happened?
Yeah, well, this dovetails, to my time in Vietnam, actually, because I was already starting to figure out and write the treatment. I think I even had some pages written when Ham called, and I had to drop everything and come make Bộ Đội CHO LON. And so, it was this thing that was an idea that was always like percolating and just I already had. And, I was working in Vietnam, and I was kind of like, remember times when I was editing during the day and writing a little at night and stuff like that. So it was just all that kind of like things that was always an interesting thing that I had to kind of keep going, because for a filmmaker, any filmmaker, you have to kind of like self-start. No one's gonna push you to do it, so you really have to kind of like get that flame going. But yeah, so I had pretty much a formed idea while I was in Vietnam. So I started kind of talking to a couple production companies, just kind of like kicking the tires. I didn't really think it was a Vietnamese movie per se, but there was interest because like, oh, it's very catchy. It's a catchy idea. Old out of shape kung fu guys. That's you could transplant that. Why not rewrite or change the story to Vietnam and set it here? And like I was saying before, the path to getting greenlit is more straightforward. So like, if I actually decided to change it over, I probably could have gotten that made in Vietnam, much sooner than the 10 years that it actually took. But like, for the reason that I said, the themes of getting that tug and pull of getting stuck between East and West, it was just felt like it had to be set in the States, or at least North America, and it had to have that tug and pull of like modernity of, the white sifu and all those things, but also those old school values that maybe even as an Asian American, we don't always ascribe to, but we're definitely, pounded, daily in the membrane on it. And so it's like, it's that type of like vibe that I was really going for, being stuck, literally between a rock and a hard place. So I kind of like, basically, I don't want to say cut my ties, but almost like basically establish I'm going to the States to make this movie, because as an edit, when you start cutting movies, you get more calls to cut more movies, and then people start seeing you as an editor. So I just had to like clean my slate as far as that, and then come back to the States and basically try to make this movie and get going. So it took a long time, and I thought it would take a lot sooner. I thought that the idea could catch fire, but for all the reasons that we were talking about, the studios here just didn't get it. They were saying, we like the idea, again, very catchy idea, but you change the cast to be white. Can you change, your leads to be, Bruce Willis or whatnot? But, again, this is that stuck between two cultures. These main characters had to be characters of color, Asian American, Black American. And it was really important to me to have that element, because it was also a reflection of my upbringing and martial arts community that I had. It was very diverse. It wasn't, monolithic by any sense. So, it's like we just, again, stuck between two cultures that didn't really understand us. So we just kind of like went our own way and basically raised the money through Kickstarter and raised the money privately as an indie film. And it's pretty par for the course for an indie film. But, we basically had to do this in Seattle, which is where I'm based. And we shot the film in Seattle and did it outside of, Hollywood, the LA structure and, all that stuff, and on our own. And then released the movie in the middle of a pandemic, which was crazy because we were able to, do this virtual film festival through COVID and all that stuff, and release the movie. And Thien knows that well. So we were probably about around the same time of releasing. So it's very challenging to put out an independent movie or a smaller movie and try to get it out there when, you only have 50% capacity at theaters, or 25%, if that, so it's like, it was a crazy process to get to where we all are here today. But, we've got some good, reception, and thankfully everyone seems to like it. So it's been a crazy ride, but it just makes it all worth it when you actually be able to show it and show what we actually were trying to do and what we're eventually going for, and show the final product. Then people get it. And then now people are like, no way these guys could be white. Like, no way, like it's impossible. So it's like just one of those things you have to kind of really create it and show it what you have in mind, and then it clicks together for people.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to do a prequel or a sequel, but either one would work. With these, either from the high school days, or now they have to, do whatever they do after the. I'm not going to give away the ending of the Paper Tigers. Okay, Ham, let's talk about your movie, My Ca. Philip, let's show us the trailer for My Ca, please.
Đừng bỏ anh lại nuôi con một mình được. Anh có thể.
Nhà mình nhiều nợ lắm phải không ba? Lỗi là do con không chịu chuyển nhà đi.
Mỹ chưa có dịp nói với Hùng, nhà Mỹ dọn vô Sài Gòn ở.
Lúc này anh không biết Hùng nghĩ cái gì nữa.
Ba hứa đi xem mua sao băng, mà ba không giữ lời hứa. Ghét ba! Đúng lúc con cần mẹ, hãy nhanh lên trường. Hả? Bạn biết nói tiếng gì không? Tiếng Việt Nam. Hùng, bạn tên gì? Micah. Micah, thiệt là một cái tên siêu đẹp. Bạn cưới tôi nha.
Anh nhìn gì vậy? Bạn ngoài hành tinh của Hùng hả? Bạn ngoài hành tinh của Hùng hả?
Mày đứng đó làm gì đó? Chạy theo bắt trước con bé cho tao.
Micah, sao tới rồi kìa Micah. Cô, lên.
Cô, tay em bây giờ.
Quá mạnh mẽ, quá đẹp.
Okay, Ham, first of all, I think your movie wins the award for the worst Vietnamese man's hair ever, with a variety of characters there. But it also wins the award for the cutest actors, kid actors I've ever seen. Okay, so I don't really assume, first of all, full disclosure, Ham and I were housemates for a few years, so I got to know Ham pretty well. I would never have imagined you, of all people, directing a movie about kids. You've, showed, I've never seen you express any interest in kids. So how did this come about, that you basically did a sci-fi kids movie?
I mean, in a way, I mean, I've always had kids in my film, though, from my very first short, The Prescription, to The Anniversary, and even to Journey from the Fall. I just never thought I would be doing like a family kids film, in that way. But it only came together because I had just lost my mom in 2018, and BHD was trying to do this re-envisioning of the old Micah TV show. So Micah was actually originally a Czechoslovakian TV show made in 1974, pre-ET, right? That found an audience in Vietnam in the late 80s, early 90s. And such a huge following that people would be waiting. They only made one season of it, but they would show it every summer. So all the kids would wait until the summer so they can see Micah, right? And so, BHD, I think the head of it was a huge fan. And I think Martin from Early Riser was a huge fan. He wanted to start this project. But they had been developing for 4 years and they couldn't find the right fit for a director. And so I think on Vincent, I had worked with him on a previous film. And he was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, would you like to take a stab at this? And when I read the little briefing about he had written like an outline about the character. It's a little boy who just lost his mom. He's super sad and he doesn't know how to get over, his grief until he meets this alien girl. So I was like, I could do this. I know that kid, right? And so I really wrote it for my mom. I wrote it as a way to sort of also get over my own personal grief. And so, and it's a very different take from the TV show. The TV show's got a lot more kids. And it's all about Micah, exposing to the world that she's an alien and having this press conference. But mine is completely, our take is different because we took a very intimate, direction. And so, yeah, but still trying to keep it fun, and keep it for kids with a lot of fart jokes and things like that, and really a lot of silliness. So I would say it's sort of, it's like a family sci-fi film, right? It's not necessarily a kid's film. With a little bit, it's like E.T. meets Home Alone meets,
Spy Kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I had a lot of fun, and thank God we found the kids that we found, because they really brought the film to life, and they really, yeah.
I have to say the kids were terrific. They're super cute, all of them, all three of them, and they're good actors. I mean, they really got into the roles. They didn't feel artificial or anything like that. So last question for you: what was it like to work with them? How did you elicit these performances?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I let them be kids. I mean, for the most part, I think that's the key to working with kids. Well, there's the other secret is boba tea. Always have boba tea on set, because that gets all kinds of performances. No, but for Kubel, the Tintin, the little boy who plays the sidekick, he's great and he's a stage actor. So really for him, it's all about making everything small. and letting him just still having a lot of fun with it. So he would make up a lot of stuff on set, but most of the time he's like screaming his lines.
Hairstylist, their hair is like both equally, big. Right?
Yeah,
he had the best
hair. He came to the audition with that hair, and I said, "Don't change a thing."
Great. Yeah, he's really cute. All right, Philip, I'm going to turn it back to you. What's happening right now?
That's a good question. Hopefully folks in the Zoom today or in the Zoom webinar tonight are enjoying the conversation. We want to urge y'all to continue to pop your questions in our Q&A, and we'll do our best to try and get to them in a timely manner. I just got a quick couple of plugs before we hop straight into the Q&A. Again, want to thank our sponsor for tonight's show, the Certina Foundation. And for everyone out there who might be interested in sponsoring Accented, please reach out to us at wearedvan@gmail.com, or to check out dvan.org and contact us, or DM us on Instagram. And for everyone that's out there right now, if y'all want to take some pictures, take some screenshots and post them onto Instagram, we'll go ahead and repost them so you can have your couple of seconds in the fame and clout of these wonderful folks that we've got on the show tonight. I also want to make a plug that Textures of Remembrance, Vietnamese artists and writers reflect on the Vietnamese diaspora, is currently being presented at the Cadets Galleries in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. There's also a way, and I'll drop it in the chat, for y'all to do a virtual tour of the exhibit if you aren't able to go to Minnesota and check it out. The exhibit will be live until March 13th, and then we'll be making its debut on March 27th in Oakland, California, in the Bay. So hopefully we'll see y'all in person for that. Also, to plug Diacritics, Diacritics is DVAN's blog that showcases art, literature, and stories from writers, artists, and culture makers of the Vietnamese and Southeast Asian diaspora on and from all shores. Unfortunately, we couldn't have either of the Diacritics editors with us tonight. Usually we would have Eric and he'd pop up. But for today, I'm the stand-in Eric. And this month's Diacritics book spotlight, we do one of these every month, and you can also get the book from Eastwind Books of Berkeley for a discounted price, is Pop Song by Larissa Pham. This month's recommendation is a debut essay collection, and it's an exquisite mix of art criticism and memoir. Whether she's contemplating the minimalist paintings of Agnes Martin or exploring her impulse for running at night, Pham brings together the discerning eye of an artist and the lyricism of a poet. Though it covers a wide range of subjects, the through line of these well-crafted and honest essays is the search for meaning and transcendence. Ooh. Pham is a clear-eyed essayist, easily her generation's Joan Didion or Susan Sontag, an important new voice, and that's from Eric Nguyen, who is the editor-in-chief for our Diacritics blog. And with that, cheers. How y'all doing so far? It's almost the end of the show. We've got like 10, 15 minutes left. Hopefully y'all still have your drink. We didn't do a cheers at the beginning.
We didn't do that, and I don't know what's happening. I have a ghost cup in my hand or something, but I have a whole decanter of Hibiki here, and I'm almost done with my first glass. Cheers, everybody, and congratulations to you on all of your accomplishments and your new movies that everybody can watch right now, except for My Cow, which will be coming out in May in Vietnam, and then hopefully it will be available somehow in the US at that time. But The Paper Tigers and Booyah, you can watch it right after this if you want to online. Congratulations.
Yes, cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thien, did I also hear you're going to at least see everyone, since you're the biggest box office champ right now?
That is over. That is over.
That is over.
It's the new year. It's a new year. It's a reset.
You think you could hit up An Juntan for us and get him to at least see us instead, though? Because I'm still, maybe that's a point. Like, how was it like working with him and with these people in Vietnam that literally, like, when you were mentioning him earlier, he's literally like the biggest like star in Vietnam, right? And then with the success of Rap Viet 2 and kind of having this East meets West in terms of tradition versus modernity clashing. If you would, like, one of the questions that I would want to point to you first, Thien, is you're also in the OC, right? So what was that Vietnamese American reception of this Vietnamese film and the other, made in Vietnam films that you're working on?
By the way, Dentang is the actor that plays the father in Bo Ya. And I just looked up his biography. Apparently he's only like 35 years old, but he did a pretty good job of making himself look like 50, for example. So that was great.
Yeah, I think he's always playing older folks, right? Older person. And the movie Bo Ya is based on a TV series, a web series that he did. And then, you know, from there he used that character and turned into a feature film with all the characters in the series, but the stories are completely independent. So you don't have to watch the web series to watch the film, and it's kind of not related in a sense. So it's easy to follow. But yeah, in terms of you know, Philip question, I think the reception it's always difficult in terms of distribution. Every single time we bring a film over to the U.S., there's always a risk in multiple ways. The first risk would be, you know, financially, because no matter how big the Vietnamese film is, when it came to the U.S., it's still a very small film. You know, in terms of compared to, you know, the landscape. So when we go to the theaters, and when we release a film, we want to put Vietnamese film in, you know, I would call like a mainstream theater. So like, you know, we work with AMC, the top three chains like AMC, Cinemark, and Regal. So we want to make sure that the film is not just playing in art houses, because it's kind of limited the opportunity for the Vietnamese people to watch the film. So when we take a film and put it into these theater chains, we, in a sense, we compete directly to the you know, to the Hollywood films. I mean, let's take Bo Ya, for example. The first weekend we opened in US is that the first weekend of Quiet Place 2 and Cruella. So that's we come out the exact same weekend. So in terms of real estate, you know, our film has to do really well on the first weekend, you know, in order for us to survive. With, you know, Hollywood films, when a film come to the theater, they have some kind of contract or obligations. The theaters have to put the films in a certain amount of theaters. So regardless how the film's doing, it has to play in those theaters in a certain amount of time. So when our film come to the U.S., a Vietnamese film come to the U.S., we don't have that kind of leverage. So when the film doesn't do well on the first weekend, on Monday it's gone. So it's just out of, there's no way for us to recover. So the reception for the film is extremely important. I keep saying this over and over again, and I hope everybody would help me spread this message. Is that if we want to support independent films, we have to come out and watch on opening weekend. Have to, like, it has to be at the first weekend, because by the time the Monday roll around, the fate of the film already been decided for the next weekend. So if you go watch the movie on a Monday or Tuesday and Thursday, it means, I mean, it doesn't mean absolutely nothing, but it doesn't really make the impact anymore. So the first weekend is the only thing that I look at. If it doesn't do well, it's gonna be out of theater. Luckily for us, when the film Bo Ya comes to the U.S., the you know, the momentum in Vietnam is already there. So when it came, everybody kind of excited to go out and check it out. Another challenge that we had was that when we first opened the film, remember we're in the pandemic, so we have half the capacity. So the theater is no longer allowed to be full capacity in the theater. So it can only have, you know, half the theater. So let's say the theater is 100 seats. We get that room. The maximum we can sell the tickets is 50, because they cannot fill up the room. So luckily for us, like again, when we show the film, the audience loved it so much, so that we had a lot more leverage. So we had to kind of talk to the theater, hey, you know what, give us more room, and our team literally have to be on the phone call with them on like basically real-time update, because they move very slow. In the chance of they do not want to upset the big Hollywood films. So in order for us to give room for us, they have to kind of like, you know, do some tricks and then try to kind of like, it's a lot of like pulling teeth for us to be able to get the theaters that we want. So.
Well, I also wanted to add to that, because I think that, like, if we want to see more Vietnamese, you know, films in American theaters, we have to, you know, we have to vote for it with our money. We have to come out and support it. But it's the same way though. That first weekend box office number, same thing with Vietnam. There's so many films competing that if you don't get enough numbers the first weekend for Vietnamese films too, you get booted out and then another film comes in because there are so many more Vietnamese films. However, the good thing about the Vietnamese box office is that locals would still choose a Vietnamese film over a foreign film, right? And so that's the reason why, you know, our filming industry has still been going strong. It's because we would still rather see a Vietnamese film rather than another, you know, like another Hollywood film. And so and it's, but the only exceptions are like with the huge films like, you know, like Avengers and whatever, you know, but still, you know, a Vietnamese film will have a fighting chance. And just as Boya proved it in the box office in Vietnam, that was released during that first month that lockdown was lifted, right? 17 million, 40 billion Vietnamese, you know, dong. That's huge. That's huge. And I hope that we continue to have that kind of support within the film industry and like within the audiences, Vietnamese audiences in Vietnam and outside of Vietnam, diasporic Vietnamese audiences. We have to support the films, right, when they come out.
Right. So that
stop
means
torrenting.
Stop torrent. Let me just delete all of my torrent clients right now.
You can still torrent. Just go buy a ticket and then go home and torrent.
Right. We can torrent the Mi Chang movies, and then for the Viet movies, we have to convince our families to not just go on $5 Tuesdays at AMC, right?
You know the torrents things is I you know, again, I'm totally against it, of course, but you know, sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult to see a Vietnamese film or any certain films over here. You know, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the difficulty that for the audience here in the U.S. have to be able to see those films. And sometimes that's the only way for us to check out the Vietnamese films for some time. So I think that's like, you know, it's aside from the audience come out and support, I think the filmmakers, I would hope that they would, you know, open up, you know, kind of make it a little bit easier for us to work with them to bring the film over. Because sometimes when the film is doing so well in Vietnam, the expectations is off the roof. Like there is no way for us to fulfill that. And since, like, you know, before Boya, Dad, I'm Sorry, it was Fury, right? Fury was the #1 Vietnam film in the US, and it broke all kind of records. And since then, every single film that we talked to, a filmmaker or producer or executive, they always want their film to do just as well as Fury. And then when the, you know, Boya does really well, then everybody, you know, would like to do that. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult, right? And not every single film will be able to do that kind of numbers.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, you know, I'm also kind of guilty of going on Motfilm or Bilu TV and trying to stream these films that are being, you know, shown in Vietnam. And so I think for a Vietnamese American audience, we have a couple of questions from Kevin Nguyen, who mentioned that all of the films presented today feature Vietnamese people in Vietnam, right? Whether there is a market or an interest in America for hearing these Vietnamese American or diasporic, more of these diasporic Vietnamese stories, right? A part of DVAN's mission is to move diasporic stories from the margins to the center, to the mainstream, right? And I might even argue to say, and Bao, that, you know, The Paper Tigers is a Vietnamese American movie, right? Like I'm watching The Paper Tigers, and I remember one of the first instances of feeling like Vietnamese American representation is like in Too Fast, Too Furious with the gangsters in front of Thien A, right? And so to see the Viet gangsters come back in The Paper Tigers, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but could you speak a little bit to the Vietnamese American film market and films?
Yeah, thanks for picking it up. I mean, that's actually an interesting thing, because I think, you know, again, like we're saying, I just wanted to make the movie that was realistic to my experience and something that was reflective of stuff that I saw growing up, and, you know, all those things, and be honest, you know, essentially. And so you do have these, you know, these 3 punks in the pool that, you know, throw the N-word at a Black character and all this stuff. But, you know, we know those hood rats. And so there was all, you know, there was some feedback, and, you know, how come, you know, you're showing these Vietnamese characters and we're not positive and we're not showing those things? But, you know, at the end of the day, it's things that we wanted to show that was, again, reflective of the things that we saw and heard. So this whole construct, I think that maybe back to the original question that it was asking about, you know, the API, you know, community as a whole, is like we're starting to move away from this model minority thing and this kind of rep sweats and trying to present our best selves, in other words, and try to look good and, you know, have model characters. Everyone's good, but be realistic about that and show, you know, the warts and all the things that are kind of like things that are worth putting up to a mirror and showing. And I think that's really important for us to be able to grow and make that next step forward, because otherwise we're just going to be in this echo chamber and, show model minorities or model characters till the cows come home, So I think that's a really important thing for us. And it was just funny, it's also something that's authentic, and it's also something that people can relate to and be real. Because also when the serial characters start talking, the actor Philip is really a great improviser and stuff. And he speaks, Thien A, right? So he has all this like slang, and he starts throwing all this like really, a lot of swear words. And when we show it like in Orange County, I'll tell you, like they erupt, they're laughing, and they see, a character that speaks like them. It's not always that proper, Northern accent or whatever, no shade to, the people of the North, but it's something that feels real and feels like, something that they can relate to. And I think that's really important as well. And maybe going back to this whole kind of thing, when I was mentioning this thing about the shoes and characters in shoes, we actually have scenes where our characters are wearing shoes in the house. And so it's almost a way to kind of get through that looking glass, because, for a time, we also have to have Asians behave, be accurately portrayed and have them take off their shoes so that white people can see that we do this. This is what we do. But now I'm done with that. I want to show these characters because these are the type of guys who do wear shoes in the house. Do you know what I'm saying? Now I'm trying to tell you a story thing. And so it's like, we're kind of in a new phase, which is exciting, and something that doesn't have to be, so hamstrung about it. We have to kind of have all that baggage of the past and how we're going to be perceived by, and be respectable and all those things, and just be able to be real and show these characters and show them who they are. So I think that's kind of like, at least for me, what I'm interested in the things that I kind of want to explore and kind of get through all that mess and show how messy we are and warts and all,
I was more shocked by the shoes in the house than I was by the what is going on?
Yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
I walked into my house with my shoes on because I was like going to get in my car and I have to go get my keys, and I'm not going to take my shoes off just so I can go walk into the house. So, yeah, it's real.
That's right. Struggle's real. The struggle's real.
And I see that, and Ham, you're responding to some of the questions in the Q&A. And so if other folks would want to also hop into the Q&A and respond through typing, that also works. We might go a little bit over time, so just throwing that out there for y'all. We have a couple of questions. One from Tierra D 2021 and G Nguyen Mai about being in the Vietnamese, kind of pivoting back to Vietnam, right? Being in the Vietnamese market and dealing with censorship issues. Like, does that happen around things like when people curse? I mean, not really, I guess, when people curse in Vietnamese, but how do you all, as folks that work transnationally, how do y'all resolve or deal with censorship issues? Maybe I'll pass this in. Yeah.
You just have to tread lightly, and you have to sort of pick and choose your battles, because
maybe also like what gets censored, just to put that out there too.
Wow, that I can't answer. That depends.
Poke the bear, Philip. Come on, man.
It depends on which side of the bed the censored person wakes up on. No, but I think it's weird. It's just really random, because I'll give you an example. I did a comedy, and you have to get the script censored before you shoot, and then when you're shooting, they actually have a person that comes to visit the set, and then after you're done, you make your edit, and then the cut gets censored as well. So we submitted the script. The person was on set shooting. The character has this name like Nguyen Ting, Phi whatever it is, right? Thien A, whatever. And we submit the film for theatrical release, and they're like, oh no, you can't have a person with this name. This is the name of one of the really high official government official, and in the film she's stealing money, so you can't have this person have this name. And I go, we submitted the script. Nope, well, you can't have it. And so we literally had to, ADR and change her name. And in the film, there are, sort of like little ledgers, and then her name was printed in the ledger. So we had to use VFX and change the names, on the paper that's in the shot. And so you never know, you know what I mean? Like you never know. So that's a prime example because we didn't know.
I mean, it's interesting because we're talking about censorship. I think that's a great thought from Vietnam. And the funny thing is, in the U.S., as a distributor, we also have some kind of I wouldn't call it censorship because we don't have censorship here, right? But the issue when we bring film to the U.S., we have to be very sensitive because the red flags, right? Or the policeman in the film, things can get a little bit sensitive, right? I do not like to censor the films, so I don't look at those things as closely. However, we kind of have to know, like, aware of kind of situation, how we're going to bring over there, because ultimately the film, if it is for the Vietnamese community here, and Orange County is our largest market for film, so we have to understand our audience to see what is so sensitive, right? So we can, it's not so much about censoring the film, but we gotta be aware and be prepared for their reaction, because it can hurt the film very, very badly. Just have certain elements that the U.S. audience didn't like.
But getting back to just one thing I want to throw, just like as a hats off to Jung Tan, he was able to keep his film very clean in terms of the language, right? You can't have a story about a ham without anybody going DM this, DM that, right? But he did have it one time when it was said, and it's my favorite line in the film, which is "tao thương mày," and for me it's so great because that sums up everything with family dysfunction, right? And so it's hats off to him, like picking and choosing his battle. He saved it for that one time,
He slid in his DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was actually shocked when I heard it. Oh my God, did you see that? And the subtitle makes it worse. And when you hear it in Vietnamese, it's actually sort of normal, because if you live in an alley, you hear it all the time. But in English, there was a subtitle. I won't say it. I was like, "Oh, that's a scene."
Yeah.
In English, it's actually worse in English than it is in Vietnamese.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, being able to slide in someone's DMs in that sort of way and kind of dive into the ridiculousness of the sad and the happy, the sort of like bong cười of like being Vietnamese, I think is like wild too, to be able to do that. And I think pivoting back to the States, maybe, or somewhere in between, we've got this casting call for The Sympathizer.
Hey.
And we have a lot of questions. One from T-Boy about, how do people, being writers and artists, help grow the Vietnamese and Viet diaspora presence in the U.S. And we're just really grateful to have Viet. Literally,
Can I say something about this? Right? Because okay. Like when this casting call went out, like another casting company picked it up and broadcast it, and they put an image on it that was like a white American soldier kissing a Vietnamese woman in an ao dai. And all these people on social media got so mad. They're like, "Oh, what is this Orientalist crap?" And we had nothing to do with it, nothing to do with it. But people are like, "Viet Thanh Nguyen, what's he doing?" Endorsing this. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, so this is my first foray into collaborative artistic production, and I have to say it's difficult because you're working with so many other people. Nevertheless, here it is, the casting call. Let's find some great new Vietnamese and Vietnamese diasporic talent out there for some of these roles. I think obviously the character of the sympathizer is our biggest opportunity and challenge out there, but there's so many. I'm sure there's so much talent out there that we can find and put forward with this.
But Andrea, can I ask one question though? Will you have a good consultant on it? Because did you see my answer to one of the questions up there? Because I love Watchmen, right? I love the comic book and I love the creator of the Watchmen TV show on HBO. But I cringe every time they get to their Vietnam scenes because they don't get it right. And and my friend Jenny, she's Jenny Tua, she's the actress, right? She plays the officer, right? The cop on the street. And the thing is that the Vietnamese is not that good, right? And I go, man, somebody's got to be there to make sure like the design doesn't look like Chinatown, So when it comes to like sort of costume design, it's so easy to just think, oh, Vietnam is ao dai and all this stuff. And so like, yes, please just have a good consultant and
I mean, the reality is that I'm the writer, which means I'm nobody in this kind of production. Nobody cares about the writer. Nobody cares about the writer. Everybody will blame the writer if something goes wrong, you know. But yes, no, we have consultants. We have Vietnamese diasporic and Vietnamese people on the film, on the casting and on the script consultation and things like this. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We'll catch these mistakes.
But can I say it's so amazing? It's so amazing, and it's really interesting that even in the book, there, you know, you're talking about like he is a consultant on a film, and it's so great. It's like meta now. It's coming back, and now you're finding yourself in that situation.
That's what I said. I just want to be blown up in the movie. That would be the ultimate meta thing.
Well, yeah, I'll join in on the questioning. We're all interrogating you. See, it's very apropos. By the way, I hope you check out my submission tape. I check your inbox. But anyway,
full frontal nudity in your audition.
Yeah, it's straight up. Just open it. You see the thumbnail? Open it. Just I don't care what you
thumbnail.
Okay, yeah, exactly. It's just going to be a small thumbnail. Don't worry. But yeah, like Ham was saying, it's such an interesting thing because obviously the TV world is, you know, there's going to be a lot of cooks and stuff like that, but you are, for better or worse, going to be the face of this. Like how, I guess my question is you, it's going to be an interesting ride, you know, for you to kind of like handle all these questions, even though, you know, there's a creative process where a lot of people are inputting and Park Chan-wook obviously has his own ideas. So I guess I'm just curious to see the next a few months for you, but do you have anything you can share, like how you want to communicate or
I mean,
clarify, you know, what that means?
Yeah. People stop sending me messages about, you know, how you want to be a movie star. Okay, I have no control over this.
Oh, so you're saying me? Is that what you're saying? I feel attacked here.
He's still keeping the tape, though.
Yeah.
He's still keeping
the
tape.
I will have to ask the casting director, show me Bao's tape. I just want to see. But seriously, the writer has nothing to do with this. You all know this, right? The source material. It's, after Park Chan-wook got this, it's obviously now in Park Chan-wook's control. He's the ultimate arbiter of all this. And so, you know, when you're doing collaborative production, you have to trust all the other collaborators, right? Which means that when they do something wrong, or if the movie or TV series is a disaster, you blame the collaborators. If it works, I take all the credit. So I have no idea how it's going to work out. But you know, we have a great group of people working on it, and I have to say we have a super diverse writers' room. I don't know what the typical Hollywood writers' room looks like. I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like this, where there's only 2 white guys in the room, and it's like everybody else is an Asian American woman and 1 black man. I mean, that's an incredible writers' room, and just from the perspective of diversity and representation. And you know, we have Robert Downey Jr. Again, everybody cares about Robert Downey Jr. My 8-year-old son cares about Iron Man. No one else cares about anything else. We have something in the works. I can't talk about it for another casting part in the slot that I think, if it works, will be really incredible. And then everything else will be Vietnamese and Vietnamese diasporic actors. You know, both established talent, because our Vietnamese producer Kim Lee has all these people that he's looking at in Vietnam that you all know about. And then of course we have to find people who are not professionals, and we'll see who comes out of it. You know, I hope we make a star out of this, whoever is the sympathizer. I hope because I can't think of anybody right now, but I hope somebody incredible will be found and who will be the face of this production.
Oh yeah, Philip is primping himself. I think he's ready.
You know, let me just submit a casting call to also be an extra who gets gunned down somewhere in a, you know, but you know, we're coming up on the time, y'all, and I know that y'all have been stayed over time, and this conversation I think can go on for hours and hours. I definitely do feel like one of the things that I might also want to point out is that, you know, we're an all male panel today. And in the past, when we've done shows on representation and media representation and film, we've been able to have women, very, very, very strong Vietnamese American, Southeast Asian American women, or Southeast Asian women come and speak to their experiences, right? And so a possibility something that we will definitely be looking forward to in terms of the upcoming slate for our future accented shows is to have a follow-up with Vietnamese American or diasporic Vietnamese women filmmakers, right? And just as another quick plug for the next couple months, in March we'll have an accented show that's on community-based organizing. In April, She Who Has No Masters will be hosting a show, which is our women's collective for DVAN. And in May, I think we have an episode scheduled and just firmed up with Ocean Vuong, right, Viet? And so there's a lot of exciting, very, very exciting things up and coming for the Accented series. So please follow us on Instagram, on our Facebook, sign up for our newsletter, become a DVAN member if you'd like access to all the shows that we've done and for access to all the shows that we're going to have. So definitely want to plug that. And my kind of final question for all of y'all to kind of wrap up the Q&A is, what piece of advice would you give yourself prior to the pandemic starting? Not like when you were young. I feel like I've done that like a couple times on Accented before, but what is a piece of advice that you would give yourself prior to the pandemic starting?
I'll just go first. It's not just going to go away. It's not going to disappear. Just go away. It won't be like that. Just like...
I think for me, it's to have a focus and continue learning. I think the pandemic kind of changed my mind a little bit. I learned quite a bit during the pandemic. So for me, it's really honing in, really nail down the concept of a limitless mind. I think as an Asian growing up in Vietnam and then, in Orange County, just as Vietnam it's going to be in America, the idea that talent is born. You're born with a talent, something that you're born with. It is the concept that is very difficult to shake. And so I that's what I thought too, until, I started to learn more and I just started to realize that, no, talent is just something that you're gonna train for, you're gonna learn, you can become, right? It's a skill that you can acquire. So I think it's for me, the idea of continue to learn, hone your craft, and become excellent at what you do is the better way to look at it than to hope that you have a talent or not.
Well, wow, that's a hard thing to think about after this whole glass of whiskey, but I would say, like, sort of know your voice, right? And nobody can tell your story better than you, right? And so be it, if you're a writer, a musician, whatever you do, right? Remember your stories and then, share your stories and know your voice,
So Philip, I'm glad that you brought up the gender question. I certainly did notice that it's a bunch of Vietnamese American men here, good-looking Vietnamese American men, but nevertheless, Vietnamese American men. We are self-conscious about this in Accented, and we will do better on our future shows. But we should probably also talk about equity in the Vietnamese film and Vietnamese American film industry. That for different reasons, Vietnamese American men, even if they face racial obstacles here in the United States, they seem to have had more opportunities in the Vietnamese film industry. So I think that might be a topic we need to address. In terms of advice I would give, I would say I would have bought stock in Zoom if I had known anything else at the time. And on the question of your vision and your dreams and so on and talent and all that, let me just say, I don't think I have a lot of talent, but what I do have is a lot of stubbornness and persistence. And I do think that stubbornness and persistence oftentimes will win out over talent. I think we all know people who are talented who just never made it because they didn't stick through with it. They didn't believe in their vision. They let themselves be defeated. And we know people, who maybe against all evidence kept on working at it, and then eventually became successful in whatever they were doing. That, I think, is really, really crucial, to believe in yourself and to keep on working at it. And I'm living evidence that with a little bit of talent and a lot of stubbornness and persistence, you can make something happen. Okay, so that's a great takeaway, because that's a great equalizer. It's very democratic to believe that whatever we've been given, we can make more out of it with our stubbornness and our persistence. I want to thank all of our panelists.
In other words, this is the most untalented Lapsang party.
Hey,
Just
whatever,
what-
you know, whatever. But I just also want to say, you know, I want him to share his his hair making secrets because
Yes.
he trumps me by about 2 inches. You know, I want people to tell me like how to perm my hair. Because apparently the new trend here in Vietnamese masculinity is to perm hair.
I think you'd look good in that.
I did it once in college, and thank God there's no photographic evidence of the time I permed my hair in college. But now the cycle has gone full circle, and people are perming their hair again. All right, thank you to you all. Your contributions to Vietnamese and Vietnamese American filmmaking. It's so incredibly entertaining to have watched all 3 of these movies. You can watch 2 of them right now on streaming. In May, hopefully we'll get to see Ham's film in mass market release as well. I'm so happy about the state of Vietnamese and Vietnamese diasporic filmmaking right now, and to have these gentlemen with us tonight. Thanks to all of you in the audience for being with us. We'll see you at the next episode of Accented.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Hey.
See, I was actually not gonna submit a song because I kind of wanted to hear the song. Straight to the basketball. Is it karaoke time? I'm Vic. It's karaoke time. I brought my system.
Where's your wireless mic?
I think it's time for some shisha and some karaoke.
Absolutely.
Until next time, y'all. It's been Accented.
Bye, guys.
Good night.